Hello and welcome to the Why Dad podcast. We are your hosts, Andrew Stopelstead and Paul Wandry, and we are on a mission to discover what it means to be a dad, to be a man, and to be the best versions of ourselves. And today we recognize that there are no dads without moms, and we are very excited to have our first mom guest on the podcast, and that is Noémi Beres, and who is the co-owner of Podcast Connections, a podcast booking agency that helps entrepreneurs and experts grow their businesses through insightful interviews and connections. And with a background in online marketing and a master's degree in Danish literature and language, Noémi is a linguist, content creator, and passionate organizer. A self-taught artist residing in Cyprus for 13 years, she creates unique mixed media collages on canvas, drawing inspiration from memories, nature, and Mediterranean life. So through courses in art therapy, color therapy, and positive psychology, Noémi has experienced firsthand the healing power of art, which she uses to help others find relaxation, self-expression, and emotional resilience. And she has a son who is 13. So Noémi, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Paul and Andrew. It's an honor to be here today.
Oh, we're happy to have you. Thank you for
Excellent. Yeah. So, Noémi, what a colorful background you have, and I'm sure that influences every element of your life. I kind of want to just start digging into the meat and potatoes. What does it mean to you what does being a mom mean to you?
Wow, that's a very deep question to start with.
We're just going to start with a hardball, a fast pitch.
Go there. Yeah, it's probably the most important job in my life because I became an entrepreneur in 2007, and I thought that's the most important job in my life, and there's nothing can be more important than that. But when I gave life to my son 13 years ago, that was the most important job that ever happened to me. And and we don't have a license to do that. We never thought how to be once. And it's hard. It's hard to get into the mom role when you just like, that's the tiny baby there. And it's okay, there you go. And now it's yours. And now just raise him. And it's probably the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me, and just the unconditional love that we can give out to our kids. That's the most amazing part of it, and I think that's the most amazing part of being a mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Yeah. I love that. And like you said, we don't go to college to become a parent. Like we invest so much in our personal and professional lives. But how prepared are we to become parents? So sometimes you just kind of like jump into the deep end. And then as an entrepreneur, you mentioned that like transition. So how did you navigate that transition from being focused on your career, your entrepreneurship, and then now you have your now new most important job? How did you navigate that?
Yes, it wasn't easy. It's like work-life balance that we never have that. It's like I usually call it harmony. It's just easier to talk about harmony between work-life harmony, family, work-life harmony. It's not an easy job to do, and I struggled, and I had a burnout phase after my son was born, because sitting in the evening and falling asleep, the laptop is in my lap, and my child finally sleeping, but you have to do your work because you're an entrepreneur and you have to work. So it wasn't an easy ride, and there are certain things that you just have to give up. And obviously I didn't sleep enough. I started to have health problems, of course, because you don't sleep enough. And it was a vicious circle. But luckily, together with my husband, we figured it out somehow. When I was looking after our son during the day, so he was doing most of the work, and then we switched. And so it's trying to find that very fine line between harmony and craziness in the family. Mm-hmm. So it just tries to navigate that, because many people think you're an entrepreneur, you are at home anyway, so you can do this and that, but it's not like that. You still have to look after your son and play and sing and learn languages and do stuff together. So it wasn't easy to find that kind of balance. Obviously now he's 13, so he has his own little life. now he doesn't really need us anymore that much during the day, but obviously we still have our dedicated family time and quality time together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. How do you feel, or I guess, what would you say to parents who find themselves maybe in that initial transition stage? What is one piece of advice that you would share with them to help get over that initial hump?
You mean like giving birth and doing business at the same time, or in which way?
Yeah, exactly. Like balancing professional life and especially that of an entrepreneur with becoming a parent.
Yeah, I think at the beginning you really have to just put some time aside. And for me, it was I started to like just work ahead and doing some things ahead, and for a couple of months, because in Europe it's pretty normal to take some time off, like longer time, not just a couple of weeks, but month. So I prepared myself for that, and the business as well. It's because I knew that's my most important job that time, to look after my baby and to keep my baby healthy. And that was it. I didn't really care about that business part anymore because, okay, I did my part. I worked a lot, and now it's time to just look after myself and look after my child. And plus, I had some complications during giving birth, and so I needed time to rest and recover. And I think it's just really important. And just taking small steps, and because we all want to become these super parents and super moms, and let's just give ourselves some credit and grace and just enjoy the early time as well, because we don't have to do everything perfectly, because we're not going to. We're going to do things that are not going to be perfect. So just take one small step a day and just do it. Obviously, back then, I was so much more anxious about it, but looking back now, I'm 45 and my son is 13, so it's a different story. But if you're a young parent, just take your time, take those small steps, and enjoy the time together with your baby, because they grow up so fast. But they do. I know it's a cliche, but they do grow up so fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I recently I've heard it a couple of times, but it's kind of like, it's a reframing of the time that we have with our kids, and to highlight how quickly the time goes by. And you only have 18 summers with your kids, give or take. Yeah. And that's a little bit of an oversimplification, but it does highlight how brief of a period of time we have with our kids, where it's like one-on-one. Yeah.
So what were some like thoughts and like practicals, but also, I don't know like the right word, but just like preparing, this was going to be your first kid, you were an aspiring mom, and what was just going through your mind during your pregnancy to prepare yourself, or being ready to accept this baby into the world? Because like from an aspiring dad's perspective, like I have my nieces and nephews with me all the time, so I get to pick and choose like when I'm involved in their life. But now here you are preparing for your own child. So like what was things that were really important to you to like to focus on and prepare yourself for bringing
That's a great question, Andrew. I was lucky because my mom was a kindergarten teacher for 40 years. And plus she has this online program about how to raise kids and how to especially raise kids between age 3 and 6. Obviously, that's not the baby age, but she helped me a lot, and she gave me a lot of advice when it comes to parenting and raising kids. And she just told me, just take it easy. You have that in you. Just go with the flow when you have your baby and when you prepare yourself. Because I know we're told that you read as many books as you can, or listen to podcasts and watch this and watch that. And then you get so confused because there's so much information out there and you don't know what's right, what's wrong. And okay, what should I do now? It's just the overwhelming amount of information, especially I think. In my case, I was 32 when I gave birth. So there's a lot of moms right now and just preparing pregnancy and getting ready, giving birth. And it's just overwhelming what you have out there. And okay, so what should I do? This or that, or A, B, C, D, E, F, or like, it's really, really hard to choose. And I think most of the time you just have to go with your instincts and just go back to yourself, listen to your soul, listen to your body, because it will tell you what to do, and not to overanalyze, overcomplicate. I'm not saying that don't read parenting books or books about babies, but don't dive too much and too deep into it, because when it comes, in a way we have it in ourselves, especially moms. It will come out from somewhere deep, and I think that's the most beautiful part. But I never thought that I have that in me. But when it happened, it was beautiful, because just sometimes listen to your own instincts and listen to yourself when it comes to babies, and not to therapists and psychologists and everyone that's like writing like 200,000 books about it and talking about podcasts about that. But yeah, so just listen to yourself and ask your parents and ask your mom. Talk to your mom. Obviously, we're not everyone's so lucky that we have like amazing family and amazing parents. I was lucky with my mom and with my parents, but they know a lot. Great grandparents, they know a lot about babies, and exchange those ideas and let them share those memories, and they experience much more than we did. I think that's when the elderly generation can come into the picture, because they can teach us so many things that we don't know anything about yet.
Thank you for that. I like how at the end there, you just bring out the perspective of we have all the wisdom in our parents and grandparents to rely on, and they've been through it. And so we're not alone in this journey in parenthood. We have our own parents and our grandparents to really to look back on and rely on for helping us through that. So something good to remember.
So Noémi, that makes me think, because our family when available is a real great resource for us as parents. I'm curious, do you have family in Cyprus with you, or is that reliance completely virtual?
It is virtual now. Yeah, because I gave birth in Hungary. We moved back to Hungary for that period because I wanted to be with my parents. I'm an only child, so that was their first and only grandkid. So it was a big moment for them to be around him until he was like 6 months old. Then we moved back to Cyprus again. But yeah, we don't have any relatives here, no one. So basically, since our son was 6 months old, that was it, like only two of us. So it's not easy if you don't have a whole network of uncles, cousins, and because that's amazing when you can rely on so many people. And especially the early stage, you don't really trust so many babysitters and everything. So you just like, you are more conscious about who to let near to your child. So yeah, it was most of the time only us, two of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that something like, how did you navigate that? Did you like build your own community around you there in Cyprus with the friends that you made, or was it perhaps something else? How did you navigate those waters?
Yeah, as the kids getting older and they get into kindergarten, they get into school, preschool, it's so much easier. Parents can we asked other parents to look after our son, and we did the same, like in exchange. So, and it's getting just easier and easier while they're getting older, because obviously it's not their like tiny, weak babies that you just want to protect from everything. And it's easier when they get older. Yeah, and we had those network of people and network of friends that they helped us. But most of the time you're still alone with everything, basically.
Yeah,
this is a point Paul and I have been talking about in past episodes, and then just in our daily conversations, just like the importance of having a community life and building a community life in today's day and age, because technology, while it's making our lives simpler, we do have the ability, like you virtual interactions with your family back in Hungary, but it's also harder to like have a local community around you, because everyone is becoming a little bit more individualized due to AI or technology. And so that's one of the big things we've been discussing, is just how do we navigate this time and age in order to keep or retain or build a community, since as humans we are social creatures and there's that need for it.
Absolutely, and it's a big question right now. I think wherever you are in the world, it doesn't matter Europe and US, it is tough, because recently I just had a chat with a friend and we talked about where does our friends come from. And for me, for example, personally, like I have online friends from the US, and I've been living here in Cyprus for 14 years. And it's very hard to say that, like, very few friends that are very close to me, and they're so much closer that actually are virtual. Right. So it's such a strange world we're living in. But then I also had chat with other friends who are also from the US, by the we talked, and we just talked about that. Does it matter as long as it's a community and as long as we speak the same language, we understand each other, everybody seen, heard, valued, loved, and whatever friendship we're having, I think it doesn't really matter as long as we have those relationships, we have those friendships, whether it's virtual or in person. I'm not saying ideal is in person, but still, does it matter as long as we have friends?
Good point.
Yeah.
It's just, the dynamic is shifting, and so it's we have to be able to shift with that. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with, at least in the U.S., I think it's becoming much more common for families to go to where the job is. So that means families and communities are constantly getting spread out. So all the more, it's not like you're going to let go of those connections that you grew up with or that you built in a certain location. And sometimes the added benefit of the stratosphere is the nanosphere is you can find gems in the rough that maybe you wouldn't find otherwise. So
absolutely. And in Cyprus, the other problem is that so many people move in and out of the country. There's so many nationalities together. And so in that way, for example, my son lost so many friends because they moved away since age 3. And it's always hard on people. And one of my best friends moved away back to Luxembourg. And so it's always hard on you when people just come and go in and out of your life. But obviously it's part of it because we live in an island when people just don't stay for 20 years, but they move around.
Yeah. That's something that resonates with me because my dad was in the Air Force. So he was getting restationed every few years. So we never lived in a place growing up. I think the longest was 4 years. So it was constantly like you move somewhere, you make neighborhood friends, and then you move on. And it builds... It brings that adversity challenges you to make new friends and to get outside of your comfort zone and whatever. And so there are benefits, but there's also those challenges.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Noémi, I noticed some artwork behind you. Are these collages that you put together? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a mixed media artist, and I make hand-sewn collages on canvas. And that's what I do. I usually tell you my non-existent free time. But I had a few exhibitions and group exhibitions, and my goal is to have a solo exhibition one day. So hopefully that will happen. And I mostly focus more on the business side of things right now, but it's really relaxes me as an artist to work on my collages. Yeah.
Tell me, how did you get into it? I know your intro said that you took a number of courses. Is that what came first, the courses or the interest in art or?
Yeah, interest in art, definitely. Since I was a teenager, which was a long time ago, but I'm really interested in art. I painted, I drew, I loved everything that was creative. And when I was expecting my son, that was the time that I started to make 13 years ago, my mixed media collages and cut and paste collages, like paper collages. And somehow it just came to me, and that was an amazing place just to express myself. And I just keep doing them. And it was it became really important in my life when in 2019 I lost my dad to cancer and my grandma to an accident in the same year, just before COVID. Then we lost the business because of COVID, because it was an online travel-related business. So it was a lot of grief, anxiety happening in my life. So I went back to my roots, I went back to my art, and that was the time when I just really focused on not watching the news, not scrolling social media during the pandemic, but really just focusing and creating a sacred place for myself to help me to heal. And it worked. And then I realized, okay, if it's working for me, maybe I should do something with it, because then I did the courses, so the art therapy. And I've been still doing a few new courses too, and positive psychology. So I can help other people get on podcasts and share my message. And if I can only help just one person with my message, that's already a win.
It is, yeah. I appreciate that answer because it's something I can resonate with. My family is very artistic in their own way. The painting behind me, my mom painted. She loves to do paintings. My dad is a music man. He was raised in a musical family. When my grandfather came back from World War II, He was in the Navy, attached to the Marines, in the island hopping in the Pacific, so he saw a lot of things that any 18-year-old shouldn't have to see.
Yeah.
And he jumped into music as his therapy. And he passed that down to my dad and his brothers, and my dad passed music on to me and my brothers. And so there's just that, like you said, there's that therapeutic healing that comes just from getting into the arts, such as fine arts and music. And so that's always been something I've been, like, I want to pass on to my children as well, like the importance of just finding healing in whether it be spiritual or mental healing within art.
Yeah. So building on that, I have a two-part question for you, Noémi. One is, what do you think, and this may just be personal for each person, but what do you think is about art that makes it therapeutic, that helps you attain healing? And then the second part is, how do we, Andrew talked about passing it on to your kids, and you have your son, like how do we impart that upon our kids, especially they might not have the same specific interests as us, but passing on like the general healing power of art in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what is therapeutic about it? I think the most therapeutic part is that it really, the way it helps us to express emotions. It can be pain, anger, anything that happens in our life in a very safe way, instead of raging or instead of doing things that are not healthy for us. And even for kids, that's why it's so therapeutic about it. And maybe kids, for example, kids can meditate at that age, but they can totally use a coloring book and some colored pencils, or making a very basic collage. And just the monotony of art, it's a form of catharsis. You really understand yourself better, and you connect with yourself on a deeper level when you start making art. And you don't have to be an artist in order to do that. So that's why it's perfect for adults, and that's why it's perfect for kids, because it's just for your own joy. It lights you up, it makes you happier, it makes you calmer. And it's also proven that it helps to increase the serotonin level in your brain, which also helps to fight depression, which can happen at any age nowadays. So I think that's the most beautiful part of it, that you don't need much to do it. And instead of scrolling on social media or watching something on the TV, you can just sit down and color a few coloring books, and it's amazingly help you. And the second part of the question is how, for example, you did that with my son. For example, he was very young, 3, 4. So I started to make collages with him. It's just so easy. You need a pair of scissors, a couple of old magazines, and just a sheet of paper, glue, and then off you go. And you can just create something magical and with kids. And I did that with him. He's not so much into it right now. Computer games, unfortunately, are much more appealing than sitting down and making a collage. But he's also creative writing for him. He was always really into that, and we always supported that part. And I think that's also important. Or for me, music. I'm not a musician by any means, but I love drumming. And I got my first drum when I turned 40.
Oh, wow.
And it was it's djembe. I have a djembe drum. I have a handpan hang. And so I asked him, okay, can we play together just a little bit of my handpan, and just to feel the rhythm? And it's amazing that how kids can enjoy that too. Yeah. It's not, so it's not just, he doesn't really, they're not always into it. Obviously, you have to find the right moment to connect with your child on that level, because you can just force it. Art can be forced on kids, because then it can backfire. Because after a while, if you do something, okay, you have to play the violin for 10 years and then you'll be amazing. Maybe some kids won't, and they don't even enjoy it. And they will hate the violin the rest of their life if you just push that too hard. So again, harmony. I like to find that harmony, going back where what we were talking about, harmony in life, work, family, and with kids too. It's not pushing them too hard, but somehow just leading them into something. And I love the interview you did, the gentleman. I was listening to it today, who wrote your very first guest on the show, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name. And that was a great interview, and I loved what he was talking about, that leading them into something, and not just telling them what to do, but leading them. You are You're not their teacher, but somehow their coach, just leading them into life and leading them into art too, and help them to create something beautiful, but not pushing them.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to do with my son too. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, those are great answers, and thank you for that. And so it sounds like the healing part is a lot about, comes down to processing your emotions. And I imagine that also helps you get to know yourself much better, which then sets you up for greater success and improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. And he also told me, he also said during that interview, and that just, it's really paid attention to that, like the school system in the US, they don't really focus on like art education so much because math, science, whatever, everything is so much more important than art, for example, because you're going to be a starving artist or something, all these stereotypes we have,
right?
Which is not true, because you can be an entrepreneur, you can be an artist at the same time, and you can be successful, like truly successful. And we have the same problem in Europe, because you can learn music, you can do this, you can do that. Yeah, we have a focus on marketing and everything because they're so much more important. But then everything just like kind of complements, and you can complement each other. So you can totally work with that too. And creativity, like coming from art, and use that in your business. Like in my case, I do that too. And it's pretty amazing that you can intertwine these things in your life and in your business. So we just focus on, I think, more on art for kids, because that's how you express yourself. That's how they become more creative in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating to see. I have a 4-year-old daughter and a newborn, but our 4-year-old daughter, she goes to daycare, and they do allow a lot of free time to do art. Mostly it's coloring. Sometimes there's some other medium as well. But it's crazy, like, to me, to see how long a 4-year-old will sit down, and she'll take a whole page of paper and she'll fill it entirely with like intricate designs and drawings, and it blows my mind. But like the aptitude is there, and usually there's a story being told too.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I really enjoyed the time when I was coloring with my son. He was like at the same age as your daughter, and we were talking in the meantime, because you can have the best chats during those times. It's like coloring, and you're just asking questions, not interrogating your child, but like asking questions about his life or whatever he's thinking, and that's just pretty amazing, because it just flows so much easier when you sit down and talk about it.
You're not going to have nearly or any conversation if you just sit them down and be like, okay, let's have a talk. That's not how art, play, anything else that kind of brings down those defenses and gives them something else to do. Yeah, that's a great way to do that.
Yeah, and going back to the therapeutic level of it too, my eldest niece is 12 or 13, and she has autism, but like her space to gather herself and root herself is in art, and she's a phenomenal artist. She loves to draw and paint, and so whenever life is getting too much for her to handle, she just goes and grabs a pad of paper and her pencils and sits down for hours and just creates the most amazing art. And it's just her just self-therapy of, this is where I know I can find myself again and root myself in reality. And like you said, art is so important for just being able to express our feelings and our emotions in ways that words cannot describe, and you can just let all of that out on the canvas or the paper or whatever your medium is, and be vulnerable, so to say, in that moment.
Yes. Yeah, and because in today's society, is like emotional vulnerability is like a weakness, even when we are grown up, and the same for kids. And it's just beautiful that you can really express those uncomfortable emotions or whatever you're feeling in whatever you're making, like painting, drawing, and it's really beautiful. And also help kids with self-esteem. It's an amazing journey that you can really, really help to improve their self-esteem through art, and for adults too, and not just kids.
Yeah. And speaking of adults, I think you mentioned that you helped teach adults art. Is that correct? And specifically therapy, or no?
No, actually, what I do is usually I go on podcasts and,
Okay.
and I share my knowledge and my
sure.
story about that. So that's this way I'm helping. But actually, right now you're not far from the truth, Paul, because I'm getting ready for an online presentation plus an online course where I
Okay.
got invited, and I'm going to help people to make collages. And these people they have Hungarian heritage, like me. I was born and raised there, but they are in the US and they just really connected to their Hungarian roots. Some of them speak Hungarian, some of them don't. But they would love to incorporate their memories into some kind of art project. So I'm going to do like a 4-week course. It's going to be free to join. And it's going to be fun to see adults doing that. And it's therapeutic, plus it's about their memories, it's about their heritage. It will be interesting.
Yeah.
So that's actually the first time I'm doing something like that. Yeah, it's a debut with that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Where can people, so if we have any listeners who have that Hungarian heritage and are interested, where can they find out more about that?
Yeah, the best to get in touch with me, and I can share all the information at this stage, because it's not official, the page yet, but you can definitely get in touch with me on Instagram. You type my name in, Noémi Beres, or LinkedIn. I'm always available there, so we can have a chat about that.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And then on like more of the general scale, let's say, because it's also it's hard to impart on your kids what you haven't experienced yourself. So let's say we have parents listening, or aspiring parents who haven't like ever been exposed to art, and maybe they're a little intimidated by all the options out there. What would you recommend to them to dip their toes in the world of art?
I would say the easiest and just the basic things that you can do, just coloring books. It's so powerful. It still has the same effect on you. That's great. And the other thing is not about drawing or painting or whatever, but if kids really love rhythm, and you don't really need much to learn, for example, to play in a djembe. The djembe drum is probably the easiest thing that you can do. And I have friends, and I know they do courses for kids and for adults and kids with disabilities and with everything. And djembe drum is just an amazing tool to get started and dip your toe into the world of music. And it's pretty amazing. I drum every morning, like for 5 to 10 minutes, and it really helps me to get started. And if I have some kind of stress for that morning, I can definitely drum away. So I would say you can buy these djembe drums. They're not expensive, and for kids, it's amazing. Like you can either do music, you can do like coloring. But anything can be therapeutic. Even like a walk with your child can be therapeutic. It's not art, but I'm a walker, so I love walking. I walk every day. And I sometimes do that with my son, if I can invite him to do that. Not every day, obviously, because he's not really into that, like daily. But if we can do it together, that's amazing, because the best conversations we have, it's always around, like when we walk by the sea or when we walk around in the neighborhood. And it's so precious. I just love that time with him, because he really opens up. And if there's something on his mind, he just opens up about it and we talk about it. And that's not art, but can be anything. Or just teach them how to take cool pictures with their phones. We all have mobile phones. They all have mobile phones, and all these tiny moments or beautiful moments in our lives that they can just take a picture. Like the other day, we went out for a meal, and it was like a holiday, the Pentecost holiday in Cyprus. It was a long holiday, and it was so cool that I saw my son just taking out his phone and just taking pictures of things. And it's because he saw me doing that, and we are the example, we are the mirror. Mm-hmm. So if we can teach them just by example, that's amazing to see. Oh, okay, so he likes taking those pictures too. So that made me proud. At least I did something right there. So inspired him to do something.
Yeah, that's such a great point. There's a phrase I've heard. It refers to habits, but I think it refers to life lessons in general. But like habits are caught, not taught, because we can tell our kids all we want, and some of it will sink in, but really they're going to do what they see us doing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So how do you feel? I know that art has really been a source of healing for you, and how do you feel like it's influenced your your parenting style and also your personal career, like how has that changed both of those aspects of your life?
Oh, I love that question. Yeah, I definitely became so much calmer and more patient with myself and with my family, with my son. I think that's really important because I wasn't always like that. And it's just really hard to be learning patience and learning to slow down, because you can't rush art. Like when you do something, you just can't just rush it, because that's not the whole point. You need to just kind of enjoy the journey of art, of life, of business, and not just rushing things in life, because we are in so much rush and there's so much busyness in the world and so much noise, and we just forget to slow down and just be a little bit in silence and gather our thoughts without any distractions. And I think art helped me to do that, and it takes time to do that, and it takes practice. And I'm not just talking about like journaling and meditation, the usual stuff that people tell you to do, but just really to understand yourself better and just have a better relationship with yourself and with your family. And patience. It's really important. And just respect your time and that precious time with your family.
Yeah. That is so powerful. Enjoy the journey of life, because I think we can all relate with just how fast paced it is, and it's the next big thing, and the next gotta get to school, gotta get to like sport events, gotta hit this deadline for work, gotta, and oftentimes that creates a sense of urgency that makes it harder to just be in the moment. But what is more important than the moment with our kids and all of that is so that we can have a good and wonderful and fulfilling life. So it kind of like defeats the purpose sometimes if we get too stuck in the daily grind. So that's a powerful reminder. And I also like how art, music, whatever, offers an alternative, and maybe even a more powerful alternative in certain ways than you mentioned journaling or meditation, which are like, at least in my feeds, are constantly recommended. But maybe it's not for everybody. Maybe they don't want to journal. Maybe they don't want to meditate.
Yeah.
But you can achieve the same or even greater self-expression, self-realization, self-reflection through these means.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up, Paul, because I know you and I have been talking about, since we started this podcast, just the importance of setting aside 5-10 minutes a week on self-reflection minimum. And then if like you really do have this interest, like it opens up a whole lot more possibilities to really come to know yourself more. We talked about using art as an expression, but then you get to understand yourself, like, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling, and really understand yourself more through your expression in your art. So I really like how you brought that up, especially with kids too. It's like they're not going to know how to meditate or journal necessarily, but you're giving them that outlet through art to come to understand and think about themselves in that way. And that's so important for young kids, and I've seen it in my nieces and nephews, just to give them some way that they can stop all the rush of the reality around them and focus on what's going on inside of them.
Yeah. Something you said there, Andrew, made me think of, I think it's so easy to, when it comes to art, especially our kids' art, to say, oh, that's so good. And that focuses on the quality of the art, whereas that's not necessarily the purpose or like what is most important about art. So do you have any thoughts about that, Noémi?
Absolutely. And it's because, we were all born artists. Like kids are born artists. And I think society, the school system just kills that kind of creativity. what we got. And then when we are reached a certain age, it's like we're doing these art therapy courses and we go in there and it's wow, and we can do that and it helps us. It's like amazing, but we knew that all the way long. We just lost it. So and and the journey is so much more important because you're not an artist. Doesn't have to be perfect. Perfection has nothing to do with it. You don't even have to show it to anyone, and you don't have to force your kid and you just put it on Facebook like what they drew or whatever. It's their thing. It's sacred. It's for them. They can keep them. They can throw it away. They can do what they want with it. It doesn't really matter as long as it helps them to feeling better in life. And for me, I have always like 3 steps that I recommend to adults and even to kids that like explore different art forms because painting is not for everyone. I used to like painting. I don't like it anymore. Just pick your poison. Obviously, we all have something that we are getting excited about or passionate about, and that's important to find that kind of passion about something that just keeps that light burning in us, and then incorporate into your daily life. Whether it's a kid, whether it's a parent, just set aside a dedicated time, schedule something like it, and it doesn't have to be 2 hours drawing or coloring. It's like maybe just start with small steps, 5-10 minutes to do something that lights you up. And then doing something, and the third step is doing something in community. It can be virtual, it can be in person. There are different like art communities, even for kids, and art clubs, or I don't know how you call them in the US, but you can totally join them if you are a parent, or even if you're together, like parent-kid art communities, and connecting with other people through art. That's an amazing thing, and also just maybe making friends through that. So I always advise this, just set aside some time because we all have that time to do that. We just don't really focus on it anymore because it's just not so important.
Yeah. So Paul, you said, especially with kids in art, like we can say, oh, that's so good, and maybe they're not looking for recognition necessarily. We've been talking about they're expressing their emotions in this art. Like, how should we, if our kids are into that, like approach, like, just what questions should we ask them to get them to use that as a medium to open up about what's going on inside of them? What were you feeling when you're drawing this, or what's going on in your mind, or what story are you trying to tell? What's the best way to approach like that topic instead of just giving them that's really good, or this, or the negative, avoiding the negative of this line's not straight, or things like that?
Yeah, don't correct or don't try to focus on perfection because that's not the whole point. But I love the questions like, what were you thinking why you did that? But don't ask the why questions, I guess, because why is so dark? Why is so red? I guess kids can get defensive and they just stop talking about it. Right. But I think just go with the flow and just try to be in their place and ask them, okay, and so what was on your mind, or what were you thinking? And I love those questions. Like you can totally ask that from kids. And what inspired you to draw that? Or I think these are great questions to ask when you do that. Just don't criticize and don't judge, because it's a safe place and it's not for judgment. It's not for perfection. Yeah, you colored out of the line, and so what? I mean, the world will still spin around. It doesn't make a huge difference. And no judgment. It's a judgment-free place, and this is self-expression. This is all about self-expression. And sometimes even if you just don't ask questions, it's just like they show them to you, and it's, and I love it. And that's it. You don't necessarily have to comment on something that you like we all do as parents. And I think that's the best. But no judgments, no correction or nothing like that.
Another phrase I've heard recommended are like along those lines that you were mentioning, Noémi, is, tell me more about X, whatever. And the analogy was, let's say somebody is coming into your house for the first time, and like, how are you going to feel if they're like, oh, like, why'd you pick this color for your wall? Or even, but if you're like, hey, tell me about this art piece. Tell me, is there a story behind it or whatever? Oh, you're going to open up. Oh yeah, like we were traveling and there was probably a story behind it.
There's a story. Yeah, always, everywhere. Yeah. Like during podcasts too, there's everything about storytelling. So obviously,
exactly,
absolutely.
Yeah, those are great examples. And then doing that probably reinforces their connection with art or whatever it is, I imagine. As opposed
absolutely, yeah.
Sorry. But yeah, as opposed to the like definitely like the negative, we'll quash it a little or a lot. But that's great. So going back to your 3 steps, so exploring different forms, like getting curious and finding like what works best for you. Dedicated time every day, which doesn't have to be a lot of time. Like you mentioned, you spend 5 to 10 minutes every day on the drums. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yes.
Super achievable. And then doing something in community. Those are great steps. And I was trying to think, what do I do anything creative on a daily basis? And I'm not sure I do. My job in software development requires some creativity, but that's still specific to my job. So I'm going to have to give that some thought to think of what that's going to look like. But I appreciate those recommendations. And with that, we're nearing the end of our time. Noémi, a couple of things to wrap us up. One is in whichever order you like. One is where can people find you? And 2, what is one thing that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I start with the second one. Yeah, so for me, is whatever you do and whatever you do with your keys, just keep going and try to just repeat that, just being consistent with it. And I think that applies to life, business, raising a kid, like being consistent with and follow through things. So if you start something with them, just follow it through and try to be consistent with it and just keep going. And they might get defensive, like when they're teenagers or something. I'm in that space right now, so that's why I'm talking about it. So they might get defensive. I don't want to do this, don't want to do that. But yeah, just trying to lead them into that way and just for example, for us in our family, we have this Sunday sacred time that like we go for a walk, we do our hiking, we do this, we do that together. And he was he didn't want to do it at the beginning, but then he somehow eased into it now. And now he's looking forward to it. So you just have to keep trying, and not like pushing, but trying like in a soft way, and then just keep going with it. I think just keep going. That's my motto. So whatever you do. So I think that's one of the most important messages I want to leave the audience with. And yeah, where they can find me, you can find me if it's something's about podcast guesting or podcast. I'm available you can find us on Podcast Connections, plural.co. And I'm also on Instagram, as I mentioned before. You type my name in, Noémi Beres, and on LinkedIn as well. That's my space, so we can have a conversation about art, we can have a conversation about podcasts, and I'm happy to do that either way.
Fantastic. I love it. No, this has been a pleasure. What a fun conversation, especially along the lines of art and the alternatives that it gives us to some of the other, maybe like less enticing things such as journaling or meditating, but and much more approachable, I think. So I really appreciate your perspective and your time. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Paul and Andrew. It was an honor to be here.
We're happy to have you.
Yes, thank you. So this has been an episode with the Why Dad podcast and featuring Noémi Beres. And so for those listening, be sure to subscribe. And if you're found this episode interesting, be sure to share it with somebody else who you think will as well. So until next time, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Noémi. Thank you, Paul. And thank you all.
All right. Thank you.